Ah, the legend that is the MICRO-KORG. This is one of the first synthesizers I was lucky enough to own, and in my opinion it's one of the best value synthesizers out there. It must be up there one of the most manufactured since its released in 2002. It features a large control and different sound banks, and a range of controls to change the sounds. It also features a vocoder, which is a great addition for like a synth in this price range and for this size. It comes in a range of colours and themes, and as I said, I do love my MICRO-KORG. I've seen some people online creating a mini Moog style version of this by tilting the control panel, or even a modular version, and this takes up less space so you can have more options in your studio space. So I did find a MICRO-KORG for sale at a reduced price, but it does have a damaged keyboard, and I saw it and thought this would make a perfect candidate for this operation. It's also got a missing key, but the key next to it also looks damaged. It doesn't raise to the right height, and it doesn't feel right. There's something clearly very wrong with it. So let's crack on. So to start with, I'm going to remove the controls. To remove the controls, we can just pull them. The two central ones have a grub screw that need to be undone, but it's relatively easy to do this. Now, actually to do this you don't need to remove the controls, but I figured it'd just be a bit easier, and also it'd allow me to kind of clean the Korg, because this one has seen some use. I believe it had been gigged quite a bit, and that's kind of why it got damaged. It's nice to think that, you know, there are 20-year-old MICRO-KORGs out there, and some of them will be coming towards the end of their life, and I'm hoping that by cutting this in half and removing the key bed, we're able to save this one and give it a new life. So I removed the wooden ends. This is one nice feature that, you know, I really like on synthesizers, is the walnut or dark wood ends. Once the wood ends are removed, you can definitely see what the appeal of them was. It doesn't look quite the same with just the exposed plastic at the sides. We're going to have to try and think of how we're going to save these wooden pieces and reattach them, as we want to keep the aesthetic of the synthesizer to be as accurate as possible. So next we're going to remove some screws. So there's a whole range of screws on the back. We're just going to undo these. It's easy enough. So when I've seen other people do this, one issue you've got is we have a pitch and a modulation wheel. Now, it's very difficult to reincorporate those wheels back into the design once you cut off the keyboard, because those wheels appear on the keyboard. But they are kind of essential controls in my opinion, and if you just unplug them, it will automatically pitch bend one direction and also be fixed at a modulation at one direction. So to account for this, I've come up with an idea that it's going to involve 3D printing a slight extension to house these wheels. This one's missing a battery cover. I'm not really bothered about that. I'm not going to use it. I could 3D print a cover for it, but it doesn't bother me in the slightest. So now we've removed those screws, we can remove the back cover and we can see what's inside. It looks a little bit intimidating at first, but it really isn't. We can just start to undo some of these ribbon cables, and I simply can pull out, or a gentle bit of pliers. You only remove from one side, so do be careful not to pull the side that they don't come out of. And when these connectors are unplugged, the MICRO-KORG doesn't seem to have any issue not receiving a signal from them. So next we're going to undo the brackets that hold on the modulation and pitch wheels. They simply unscrew and then they just fall out. It's quite a good opportunity once these are out to give them a good clean. These can get a little grubby. So that's part of my mission with this synthesizer, is to give it a good clean as I'm going around it. I want it to look and play as good as new, or the best I can. So now we've cleared everything out of the way, the next thing is to remove the keyboard. So this is held on with a few screws, once more we can simply just start unscrewing it and it just slides out. It's quite spacious inside here. I reckon it'll be a good opportunity for some mods. I haven't really seen anyone do anything on that, so I'll be curious to know what mods you've heard people do and what you'd recommend. But yeah, so the keyboard just comes straight out. We'll have a look at this in a bit and kind of see how savable it is. Because chopping a synth in half is a little controversial to some, and some people won't necessarily understand the logic. So I'm just going to saw the case to remove this. I'm just using this pull saw. And then for the bottom part, I'm just going to use a table saw, just so I get a nice clean straight cut. I think if you've got access to something like this, it will definitely make a difference to the quality of the finished product that you come up with. So now we've cut the top and the bottom part, we can slot them together. And yeah, they seem to align quite nicely. So I'm just going to go around, clean it all up. I think it's starting to look quite cool, this. It is a little controversial. I'm curious to know what you think. Is this the wrong thing to do? Or do you see it as me saving the synthesizer and giving it a new lease of life? I'd be curious to know what you would do in this situation. So yeah, this seems to line up pretty well, but now we have a big hole in the front of the case. So I'm going to make an extension block for the side of the synthesizer. In this we're going to use FreeCAD, and this is a FreeCAD software where we can create a block and then we hollow it out. And then we can put some holes in. These holes allow for the modulation wheels to go through. But next we need to also include some mounts, so how we screw those modulation wheels in. I've based this just on the bracket geometry that we've removed. And I'll use the same screws to screw it in. Put some tabs on the bottom so we can screw in a base plate. And yeah, I think this will do. I've based it on the geometry of the new synthesizer so that when we attach it to the side, it should follow the extruded profile of the synth and shouldn't really stick out too much. So I've inserted the wheels and I've inserted a base plate. I think this looks quite good. I think this could work. And then I'm going to make some front plates that are going to slot into the case that we've cut. I've spaced these out so they align with the screw holes, because then I'm going to have to miss the screw mounts. There's a few little smaller screw holes on the case where it needed to be trimmed, but this kind of slots into the top part and then slots into the bottom part. But yeah, it seems to do the job. It covers that hole that we've created. So we need to create a few more, and then we also just need to clean up the plastic. There's a little bit of super glue that I've noticed here stuck on the front of the case. So we'll just remove that with a knife so that these new front panels are going to fit in. I've created a Thingiverse file so you can download all of these 3D things if you want to do a similar modification to a MICRO-KORG yourself. So this is how it comes off the 3D printer. It looks pretty tidy actually, I quite like it. I've gone for a grey so it kind of blends in a little bit. If it needed painting, I suppose that could be an option, but this will do for now. If you don't have access to like a 3D printer, there's quite often ones available in the community, such as at makerspaces or like local libraries. So reach out to your local 3D printer community if you are interested in something like this, and like the cost of materials really isn't that much. I'd probably say the whole thing's cost me less than £2, probably less than $3 to print the extension and the front plates. So next we need to see how the wheels that we have and see how they fit into this case and make sure that, you know, they move. Yeah, this could work. Now I haven't left the hole on the side, but I'm just going to drill that afterwards. And I've kind of done a little bit of a bodge here, where I've just used some wood screws to attach the two parts together. My thinking was that I didn't want to glue them, and I just wanted to have a little, you know, dry fit. But yeah, this holds together well, so I'm going to put some glue in there, reattach those screws. I put a hole in to allow the lead to fit through, and thankfully the lead is just long enough where we don't need to do any soldering. So next we're going to look at what the keys have done. Now if we look closely, we can see that that key that didn't sit right has been super glued on, and that explains why it's at the wrong angle. That's fair enough. If you look at each octave has its own comb of white keys, and the break appears over to where the join is. So there's two combs that are damaged. I'm going to remove the end key. Now this is really interesting. If we look at, there's no spring. I would expect a spring in a key. It's like, how does it bounce back? But it uses its own stiffness as a plastic to bounce back, so it's like a living hinge. As a design, this is really cheap and really effective. Like, it's good, but there is an issue with this type of design, as it has a very finite life. Like, you can only press that key so many times, and then it will crack and fail. So these end blocks were pretty beat up, so I've given them a good sand on the belt sander, and then just going to reapply some varnish. I've had a bit of a life, but I think, you know, taking the time to sand these up and re-varnish them will make the difference to make this synth look good. Just using some dark or coloured varnish, and then we'll just leave it out in the sun for a bit until it gets nice and hard. Ideally I probably could do a few more coats on this, but I was in a bit of a rush to make this video. So next we're just going to attach the cover plate for the side. This is designed so some wood screws will fit in. It's nice to be working on this project compared to the electric piano project I'm trying to make, is that this one is quite easy to get to a finishing point. But yeah, look at this. This is starting to look good. We've got the front covered, we've got the extension, we've got the wheels that actually work. So yeah, I think we need to give this a good test. And the nice thing is with this, we can create a MIDI track and send it to the synth and record the audio out and just have this sitting on the desk. It's not going to take up much space. It's going to be pretty good. So I'm testing it with my Roland keyboard here. The MIDI in works fine. The controls seem to work fine. It's cleaned up real nice, and I genuinely think, you know, we've given this a new lease of life. I'd be curious to know what you think. If you're interested in doing something similar, I'd be really curious to know. So do let me know if you use the files to create your own. That's part of the reason I like to share them. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, thank you. Goodbye.